Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting beach boat and birds, and I'm going to be sipping on some wild cherry tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, Mars black, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, deep yellow, and green oxide. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 3 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up too if you'd like. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same size and type of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to paint the base coat for our water and our sand. I'm going to be using my large brush to paint, but I'm going to be using my medium brush to mix colors and show you where I'm headed with those. So I'm going to be making myself a nice soft blue for the water and then a nice light tan for the sand. So I'm going to use my medium brush to mix this. The colors I'm going to be using are black, brown, white, and blue. Here are the 2 colors that I'm going for. This is going to be my beach sand. So how I got to that was quite a bit of white, quite a bit of brown, and then just a teeny touch of black. So the black is going to just make it so it's not too brownish. It'll just neutralize it a little bit and make it have a softer tone to it. So that's the color I'm going for my beach sand. And then I'm going to wash my brush so I can use it for mixing my light blue. So this is the color I'm going for my light blue. So how I got to that was I used my cobalt blue, white, and just a little bit of black. So what I'm in essence doing is I'm adding black and white to my cobalt blue, or gray to the cobalt blue, which is going to desaturate it and make it look less vibrant. So it'll make it a nice soft tone. So this is looking pretty good. Maybe a touch more white in there to make it a little bit lighter. And you could certainly have any color that you want. I'm just going for a nice light tropical-y type of ocean watercolor for my base. So this is where I'm headed with that. I'm going to put this brush away, take out my large brush, and I'm going to be picking up some of my custom blue. I'm painting my water portion first. I'm going to come almost halfway down with this color before I start introducing the beach sand color. Again, this is just going to be the base coat for my water, so you don't need a perfect execution on this step. You just want to make sure that you've got, it represented pretty well throughout this area. I'm going to come about halfway down on this left hand side. This line where you meet your water to your beach could be a little bit diagonal if you want your beach to look like it's got like you're coming in at a little bit at an angle. So I'm going to put this left side down a little bit farther than the right side. So this side's going to come down about halfway, and this is just a little bit higher than that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up both my custom blue for my light blue and my light tan. So I've got my light tan plus my custom blue on my brush at the same time. This is going to start the transition into my sand. So this is going to overlap both sections and give them a kind of a gradient of sorts going from one to the other. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, after I get these two just talking together a little bit here, I'm going to, without washing my brush, I'm just going to pick up my beach sand color and go the rest of the way down my canvas. We'll be adding a bunch more colors and dimension on top of this, but this really just gives us a great way to merge the two aspects together, the water going into the sand and the sand kind of having a soft entry into the water itself. And I'm just bringing this all the way down. Because I didn't wash my brush, there may be evidence of the water blue throughout my sand in various places, like I see a little bit of it down here. That's okay, because again, we've got lots of other elements that we're going to be putting on top of this that are going to disguise any of that stuff. Or maybe your sand just looks a little wet and it's got some of that blue in there. So we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our water and our beach sand. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. We're going to be doing the light source from the reflection later, so we're not going to do that right now, but we're going to put all of the motion into the ocean, and we're going to put the light spots and dark spots throughout our beach sand as well. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry, or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer to get it dry that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be starting up in my water. I'm going to be adding some dark kind of ripples into the top of the water. Then I'm going to get the water to come down lighter and lighter as it's meeting the sand, and we're going to put just some vibrant kind of highlights throughout that water so it looks like it's being illuminated by our light source and have a little bit more dimension in it. And then as we get into the beach sand, we're going to be putting some nice bright white kind of sand in through here, and then we'll get it to go a little bit darker down as it recedes down in the bottoms of the canvas. So I've got my large brush. The colors that I'm going to start with are, well, we'll be using a bunch of colors during this process. We're going to actually use all of the colors on our palette except for green oxide. So we'll use yellow, brown, black, cobalt blue, white, our tan, and our custom water blue, our light blue. So I'm going to start with my light blue and a touch of black on my brush. So I have both light blue and black. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going kind of in a left to right motion to give myself the illusion of little ripples in the water. So I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm just going to kind of lightly disperse this in through here and maybe a little bit less over here. Now I'm going to pick up more of my water blue without washing my brush. So this way I can get that darker areas that I just kind of created to blend in with the water, with the main color of the water itself. I don't want this to go necessarily black, but I do definitely want there to be some darker areas so we have some good dimension in that water and it's not just all flat. And you don't just have to go straight across left to right. You can always use a little bit of kind of a bump in your brush, like bump it up so you can have almost like a little bit of a ripple effect from the waves. And then I'm just letting that black kind of work its way off of my brush by continuing to pick up my light blue color. So as I come down in through here, I'm going to have very little bit of that black left on my brush, but if you felt that you wanted more darkness as you're coming down towards that beach sand, you could certainly incorporate more if you wanted to, but this is looking pretty good to me. Just make sure that I've got this all kind of transitioning in through here and just working all that darkness off of my brush. So now that I'm in through here, I'm going to start adding some lighter colors to the equation. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. And I want there to kind of look like there's some good dimension in this water in through here. So I'm going to utilize my cobalt blue plus yellow and a touch of white to come up with this really aquatic kind of teal type of green. So I got a little bit of cobalt blue, a touch of my yellow, and an itty bitty bit of white. I don't use much white at all. And then this will create this beautiful kind of oceanic teal type of blue. And I'm going to start incorporating that a little bit in my water in through here. I'm going to pick up a bit of white in a minute, but I'm just kind of dispersing this additional type of color in through here. Now I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel so I don't get rid of all that color, but I'm picking up a touch of white now in addition to that lighter greenish blue that we've created. And now I can use this white in an effort to get this lighter color to just kind of intermingle with the dark tones that we have underneath it. You could, if you run into any trouble, you could certainly pick up your base light blue that we created, and that will help you to get these to all kind of blend in with one another. So I'm at this point going to just switch back and forth between my teal, my light blue, and white in order to get these sections to just work their way into one another and transition myself from the ocean blue to the beach kind of notes and tones. So that's looking pretty good to me. Now I'm going to start picking up just a little bit more white on my dirty brush to get a little bit lighter versions coming in towards this beachy type of area. Not washing my brush, just letting this those blues and greens just kind of work their way off of my brush. So this is just white on my dirty brush coming in through here. As I'm working my way towards this beach in through here, I'm going to start picking up my tan plus white and a touch of yellow. So I have tan, white, and yellow on my brush. This is going to bring some sunshine to my sand. So I've got white, tan, and yellow, and I'm going to put some lighter notes in through here. That yellow helps to add a little bit of sunshine into it. And if the yellow scares you on your brush, you can always just pre-mix yourself kind of a lighter tan type of a color with that yellow, but I like to use these colors at the same time because I like the effects that I get with blending those colors on my canvas. And we also are going to be having a big boat in the middle of our canvas, so if at any time something doesn't work out exactly as you had planned, it's going to be okay because you're going to have a big boat to hide things. I think I want a little bit more yellow in this area in through here. So I just picked up a little bit more yellow on my brush to get almost like this transition of the green into the ocean sand with a touch more yellow. That'll make it look like there's a little bit more depth into that. And then I'm just going to come down into the sand with some white on my dirty brush. I want some real bright areas of my sand in through here. And using kind of this scrubbing circular type of brush stroke so I can have these kind of like textural elements to my sand. But you could certainly use any brush stroke that you want. Again, my colors that I'm going to use right now are white, my tan, and maybe a touch of yellow on my brush as I'm working my way down towards the bottom of my sand. Right now, as I'm working my way towards the bottom of my sand, I am in a minute going to start picking up just brown on my brush in order to get, well, brown plus my beach sand in order to get these bottom corners a little bit darker. But right now, just kind of still playing with my white and tan and yellow. So I think this is looking pretty good. Now I'm going to transition into, with my dirty brush, I just picked up some of my tan. I didn't wash my brush just to make sure these transition well into each other. And now I'm going to pick up tan plus a touch of brown on my brush because I want these bottom corners or the bottom portion of my sand to look a little bit darker. I'm going to have wild beach grass and stuff in there later, but right now I just want to kind of give myself a little bit more dimension at the bottom of the beach, so it looks like it's maybe, you know, got some shadows and stuff in it. So brown plus my beach sand. And if you felt that you needed to go darker or anything, you could certainly just drop picking up the beach sand color and just pick up brown. And you can have your sand having as much texture as you want or as little texture as you want. It's going to be totally up to you. And then once you've got this done, we are going to be using our pencil for the next step. So you can make any little adjusting marks or painting areas that you want. Then you can put this large brush away, take out your pencil, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for the boat. I'm going to be using my pencil. You can certainly use any drawing utensil that works for you, but I'm going to be using my pencil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through a series of markers. We're just going to connect those markers so we can have a nice basic shape for the boat to color in during the painting process. We're not doing any fine-tuned detail, just getting ourselves a nice basic shape. So what I'm going to guide you through, again, is some markers that will just connect, and by the time we're done, we'll have something with a little bit of perspective. So if you find yourself about the center of your canvas, this is about the center of my canvas, I'm going to go up from that about 2.5 inches and over to the right about 3 inches or so. So this will be my first marker. Then I'm going to make a horizontal line that is about 1 inch wide. So that'll be kind of marker number 1 and marker number 2. And then I think I'm going to actually just draw a little bit of a white line with my chalk so you can kind of see both. Not quite sure if the pencil is going to show up well on camera. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the center of my canvas, and I'm going to travel all the way over to the left-hand side and stop myself short about 2.5 inches from the edge of my canvas. So somewhere about here. This is going to be my next marker in through here. My chalk is back up here so we can see both. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to connect this outside marker to here with a big kind of a round type of edge. But I don't want you to go down too far. So what you'll do is go back to the center of your canvas and come down about 1/2 inch. I think I'm just going to go for my chalk right now so you can see this a little bit better. Now I'm going to connect here to here to here. I'm going to scoop it out to the right like this, bring it back in to here, and then I'm going to bring it back up to my end marker in through there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from here about 1.5 inches to 2 inches, make myself another marker right in through here, kind of in a diagonal. This is going to meet this marker in through here. I do want the boat to have a little bit of shape as if it is kind of like bowed out. So what I'm going to do is when I connect these, I'm going to drop this down just a little bit, and then I'll give this a little bit of a curve going in through here. So you'll see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to drop it down a little bit at a diagonal like this, and then just kind of, and it doesn't have to be anything really drastic, just kind of bow it out just a little bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect. When we go to paint it in, we'll be able to accentuate that a little bit more or get it to look a little bit more like it's got that shape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come directly down from here till I'm about, I would say, 3.5 inches from the bottom of my canvas and go over to the right about 1/2 inch. So somewhere in through here, I'm going to connect here to here with a curved type of line like this, and then I'm going to connect here to way up in through here, and I'm going to give a continual curved line. But again, so you don't go too far down the canvas, what you'll want to do is, this is the center of your canvas in through here, come down from this line about, I would say, 3.5 inches. You want this one to be a little bit higher than here. So even if you have to just kind of come over from here, make sure you're a little bit higher than that. And then you'll connect these with a curve and then kind of a diagonal line. So I'll go from here, curve this to my mark right in through there, and then just take it in through here. And then you can do any little adjusting that you feel is necessary. We're going to be using our medium brush or our large brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil or your chalk away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our boat and its shadow. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, black, and probably some of my beach sand tan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to load my brush with black paint, and I'm going to be painting the interior of my boat, or this top section, with black paint. You don't necessarily need to go all the way to your pencil mark, but because we're going to be doing a little bit of a frame edge around our boat, but you definitely want to just make sure that you get a good kind of coverage on this interior of the boat. We're going to be doing little details and stuff later, and if you wanted to use a smaller brush around the edges, you could certainly do that, but I'm just going to use my big brush here to get it done, and then I'm going to wash and dry it. I'm going to be using brown as my base coat for the exterior part of the boat. So just brown paint, no fancy brush stroke. I just want to put the base coat, so I'm going to have mine kind of looking like a wood boat. You could certainly do any color that you want. I know that my brown is definitely transparent or translucent, so you're going to see the evidence of my brush strokes as I do this. So because I want it to look kind of like wood, I'm going to be putting my brush stroke in the direction that I feel that I want the wood grain to go. And then up in this little corner, just kind of pulling it up in through there. And then what I'm going to do, I'm not going to wash my brush for the shadow making part. I'm going to be putting a shadow underneath my boat, and we're going to have our light source up in through here. So I'm going to have my shadow really dark underneath the boat, and then I'm going to bring it kind of, just get it to go kind of lighter and lighter as it goes farther away. So I didn't wash my brush. I just kind of wipe it off on my paper towel. I'm going to pick up some black paint. I'm going to put this really dark as it's meeting the boat, and then in the front edge of the boat, I want it to look like it's kind of lifted off the ground a little bit. So I'm going to disconnect my shadow from my boat right about in through here. And then in the back side of my boat, I'm going to bring the shadow a little bit around this corner so it looks like the boat is kind of sunken into the sand a little bit. So I have a little bit of black paint on my brush, and I'm going to put it pretty darn heavy right at the bottom of my boat. You can even bump into the bottom of the boat. That's going to make it look like you've got a little bit of sand texture at the bottom in through there. And right about here is where I'm just going to kind of kick it out just a little bit. I want my shadow to look like it's coming down to the bottom left, so that's going to, that's the direction that I'm going to kind of fade my shadow out. I'm going to put this just going up just a little bit in through there, and then just kind of pull this out just a little bit around the corner of that boat. And now I'm not going to wash my brush, but if I have a ton of black on there or a ton of paint, I'm just going to give it a little wipe on my paper towel just so I don't overdo the shadow. And then I'm just going to kind of rub it in like this. I'm going to allow it to just kind of work its way into that sand. I'm going to bring it down towards this bottom left-hand corner of my canvas, and I'm just using a circular type of brush stroke to accentuate the texture in the sand. In a second, I'm going to start picking up my sand tan to get this to blend in a little bit more, but right now just kind of letting my brush run out of paint as I'm coming down towards the bottom of my canvas. So now I'm going to pick up a little bit of my sand tan, not a lot, just a little bit on my brush to get this to blend in a little bit more, make it look a little bit more natural, overlapping those colors a little bit, and then let it dry. If there's any places where you feel like you want it to look a little bit more blended, go ahead and add another coat to it, but this is looking pretty good to me. I'm going to have lots of wild grass around the edges of it as well, so I'm not concerned about that. And then we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the light source reflection. So I'm going to use my medium brush. What I mean by this is my sun is somewhere up off the horizon over here. So its reflection I'm going to be putting in my water up in this area, and it's going to kind of twinkle down the water into the head of the boat, and then any little highlights I want on my water as well. So I've got my medium brush. What the colors I'm going to use are white, yellow, and probably some of my light blue as well. I'm going to initially be kind of rubbing on a light area where I want this reflection to kind of take over and its footprint, so to speak, and its little kind of ripples coming down towards my boat, and then I'll pop on some real bright little sparkly marks. So I'm going to start with a little bit of white and light blue on my brush at the same time. And you can make this as light or as bright as you want. I'm going to just kind of take it at the top of my canvas. I'm going to have this kind of going all the way to that top right hand corner and past my halfway point. So this is my halfway point. So I'm going to go a little bit past that in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow this area as it's coming down towards the tip of my boat. So light blue plus white on my brush, and I'm going to be using just kind of a rubbing left to right type of a brush stroke. You could certainly be using your big brush as you start this little bit of a reflection in your water, but I'm just going to use this brush so I can kind of get utilize it for my sparkles as well. And then I'm just going to pull out little light marks to the left and the right so it looks like it's blending in with the rest of the water. So again, just light blue plus white is where I'm starting in through here. The whole key is I don't want to go too light too fast. So that's why I'm using the white and light blue on my brush at the same time, so I can control the speed in which, or the progressive colors that I'm using. And I just picked up some of my light blue so I can just kind of get this area to be lighter in through here, again, without going too light too fast. And you can utilize this color, and you know, if you want some little light marks coming out in these exterior areas, you can certainly incorporate that. So now that I've got that light area on, I'm going to start putting a little bit of maybe white and yellow on my brush to start the vibrancy of my twinkle area. So white and yellow is going on my brush right now just to kind of get some little brightness and some sunshine qualities to my reflection in through here. And again, just making it a little bit smaller and smaller as it's going towards the top of my boat. I'm going to pick up more white at this point to start to merge this light yellow into my areas. And as I'm doing this, I'm consciously thinking that I don't want my reflective area to take over the whole canvas. So I'm just really kind of wanting to give the information that it is in fact just little twinkles in the water, and you can, you know, dot it, dash it, dab it, whatever works. Right now I'm going to just pick up white paint on my brush, and I'm going to start adding some little twinkly marks going down the center of this, maybe some little dots and dashes here and there. And then as I'm coming down towards my boat itself, I'm going to be using a lot smaller little dots, so just more the little tip of my brush, making these little itty bitty kind of polka dots as they're coming down, sparkling right towards that boat. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to take up as much area as I do. Maybe you want yours to be even brighter than mine is. What I will inevitably do is kind of let it dry and see if there's any additional brightness that I want to pull into it, or maybe I want mine a little bit darker once I see what it looks like when it's dry. But right now this is pretty good start for me, so you can fiddle with yours all you want. We're going to be using this same brush, the medium brush, for our next step, so you can get your little twinkles on your water, then wash and dry this, if I can ever stop, wash and dry your medium brush here and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our boat. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are cobalt blue, white, black, brown, and maybe a little yellow too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put very minimal detail on the inside of my boat just so it has some kind of structure in it. And then we'll be putting color on the outside, which of course you can put any color that you'd like. And then we'll put a little bit of a the top rim to the boat. So I'm going to start on the inside of the boat. I'm going to make myself a very dark gray color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a tiny bit of white and mix it in with some of my black. I want this really dark, but not black. So just a little bit lighter than black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize this dark gray to give myself a little bit of structure inside the boat. So the front of the boat is right in through here. So what I can do is I can kind of take from this corner and from this corner and just bring those down as if they're going down towards like the bottom tip of the boat, giving it a little bit of a curved mark. And then I'm going to use this color on the inside edge here and the inside edge here with just these kind of light swipey curved marks. And really all I'm looking to do is give myself what appears to be a little bit of wood texture or grain inside that boat. So just something with a little bit of a curve to it to tell the viewer the shape of the inside of the boat. So while that's drying, we're going to work on the outside of the boat. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put cobalt blue on my brush, and I am going to be utilizing cobalt blue as my color for my stripes of my boat. You can, again, certainly use anything that you want. I'm going to know that the brown paint underneath will show through, so it's going to give my cobalt blue a nice kind of neutral tone to it. I'm going to be doing stripes on mine. You could certainly do the whole boat in the same color. I'm going to just bring this up in through here because I know the front of my boat is a little bit more narrow, so I'm going to bring my stripe up a little bit wider in the back, and then I'm going to put a little bit of space in between from one stripe to the next. So I did that stripe, and then I'm going to go ahead and do my next stripe. So I'm going to leave a little bit of that brown in between. You could certainly draw these out if you wanted to have them exactly placed in a symmetrical way, but I'm just thinking that this is just a real old beach fishing boat that's been weathered, and maybe the paint job isn't the best, and maybe it's seen better days, but it's got lots of character to it now. And I'm just, again, just pulling my stripe up the top and just leaving a little bit of that brown color in between those stripes. I'm going to add a little bit more detail to it in a minute, but this is just going to get me started with my blue color in through here. Maybe we'll just pull this up just a little bit more. So what I'm going to do now that I've got my blue on is I'm going to pick up a little bit of black and brown paint with the blue on my brush, and I'm going to get this backside to go a little bit darker. So I have black and brown, and I'm just kind of pulling it in towards the right side of the boat in between my little slats. So just going to kind of pull this in towards the front or towards the midsection of the boat inside those slats. And then while I still have this on my brush, and now I'm picking up, whoops, I just picked up white by accident. Let me wash and dry my brush. We don't want to pick up white by accident. I'm going to actually, I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up some black. I'm going to put the little detail down the back here. So a little bit of black on my brush. I'm going to pop up this little edge. Maybe we use that edge to tie the boat to something. I'm going to bring this right down the back side. I'm not quite sure what this part of the boat is called, but we'll just call it the back part of the boat. And I'll just bring this all the way down. This is a great time to clean up the edge of your boat. So just bringing it all the way down into the bottom of my boat. And I want this backside to be nice and shadowed again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to wipe my brush off. So I have black on there, but now I'm picking up blue as well. So this is going to get this whole backside to really be nice and dark. So black and blue is what's on my brush. Not a bunch of black, but a little bit just to get this backside to be nice and dark. And then as I work my way towards the front of the boat, I'm going to pick up more cobalt blue to just kind of re-establish or re-wet this section in through here. And when I go to the front, now I'm picking up blue and white. So cobalt blue and white is what's going on my brush right now to get this highlight in the front of the boat. And this is one of those steps that you can certainly do in a, you know, I'm going to just do the stripes first, and then I'll do the shadows first, and then I'll do the highlight. But if you can kind of work almost wet on wet while you're doing this, while these paints are still kind of wet and blending together, that'll give you a nice kind of way to gradually get those colors to blend in with each other. I just picked up white so I can get the front to be nice and light, and I'm just pulling white down the front and pulling it back into these grooves. I didn't wash my brush, so you're going to see the evidence of the blue still working its way off. Maybe I put a little bit extra white in through here so it looks like the boat is kind of bowing out a little bit in through here, and then that's looking pretty good to me. So I'm going to kind of let that ride the way that it is. I'm going to wash and dry my brush now and put my edge on the top of my boat. So washing and drying my brush. Oh, actually, let me put the little seat on the inside. So I washed and dried my brush. I'm going to pick up brown with a touch of white. So mostly brown with just a little bit of white. I'm going to go right in the front part of my boat here, give myself a horizontal line that's going to kind of meet or cross over these little corners about halfway down. So right about here is where I've got brown and white. Something like this, cross over those little corners just a little bit, picking up more brown. I'm gonna give myself this is like a little brace or edge or seat or something on the boat. Just give myself a little mark coming in through here that'll hide around that. Doing the same thing on the other side, so brown plus a tiny bit of white, and I'm gonna give it a little bit of a curve just like the boat itself, so something in through here. I'm just going to not talk for a second here so I can get it to kind of ride along the inside edge of my boat, something like this, and it's got to disappear into this back edge like this. And then I want a little bit of a seat part. So the seat part, you just need to have it horizontal. So this should be horizontal, and I'm going to go maybe about halfway into the boat like this, and then just give myself a horizontal line, which will represent the seat in which the fishers will sit. I'm going to put a tiny bit more white on my brush just so we can see it a little bit more. So you can just kind of adjust those values as the paint is drying. Like this one to me would be the brightest because it's kind of in the middle of the boat. But if you felt that you want to add any more little bits of sparkle highlights there, that's fine. And then we've got the edge of the boat itself. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm just going to use a little bit of white with a touch, so more white and just a teeny bit of brown. So I'm kind of reversing the color that I used there. So it's mostly white with just a teeny tiny bit of brown. And I'm going to put it really bright on this edge in through here. And then I'm just going to come right around the side of the boat. So just slowing my thoughts down here for a second. And I'm going to bring this right around. So this is going to be the kind of the lip of the boat edge. So mostly white. Oops, I just picked up a little bit of blue. If you pick up another color, it's okay too. I'm going to put this edge right in through here. And you know, you could start at one end and work your way to the other, or as I just did, start at one end and then flip to the other end, whatever works for you. This is where you want to close off any unpainted gaps from the inside of the boat to the edge of the boat. And again, just remember, it's just an old rickety fishing boat, so if it's not perfect, that's okay. And again, just picking up my white with a teeny touch of brown paint, white plus brown, and doing this other edge over in through it. My hand is going through wet paint right now. So this edge over here is when you can kind of make sure that you have just a little bit of a bow in the center of the boat if you wanted to really take on that appearance of it being of a rounder type shape, something like that. I think I need a little bit more brightness in through here, and then I will give myself a tiny highlight on this little guy right here, because that to me would have a little bit of a highlight. And if you wanted to, this is where I could pick up a tiny bit of yellow paint maybe and put a little bit of sunshine over on these edges. So you know, you can use the yellow in whatever intensity that you want, but if you do want a little bit of extra sunshine on the edges of your boat, maybe white plus a little bit of yellow will accomplish that. And then make any little adjusting that you feel you might need. And then once you've got that done, we are going to be using, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the oar. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm in essence going to kind of just draw myself a long diagonal line where I want my oar to go, and then we'll just kind of build out that shape of it, and then we'll put a little highlight and a shadow on the boat, and we'll be done. And a shadow in the sand too. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to put black and brown paint on it at the same time. I'm going to have my oar just kind of resting on the edge of my boat in through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in from the bottom right hand corner of my canvas, I would say about 2.5 to 3 inches, and then come up maybe about an inch. This is where the tip of my oar is going to go, somewhere in through there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come inside my boat. So if this is the edge of my boat in through here to this left corner, if I go down maybe about 1.5 inches and then into my boat a little bit right about here, this is where I'm going to put the tip of my oar. Then I'm just going to connect these two right now with a diagonal line, and then we'll be able to reshape it or give it some shape in a minute. So just kind of giving myself a place to start, and then I can give it any kind of identity that I want after that. So I want the handle of it to be kind of, you know, on the slender side. So I don't need to go much wider than this. Again, I'm just using black and brown to start. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a circular part up at the top where the person would hang onto, like the little handle part. And then I'm just going to widen this line as I come down, maybe to about 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, something like this. So again, just black and brown. I keep reloading my brush. So right now I'm just pushing my brush a little bit harder as I come down towards right about the bottom of the boat. This is where I'm going to start to widen it a little bit. So in order to widen it and not go one side heavier than the other, what I recommend doing is starting at the bottom of the oar and just giving yourself kind of the base as to how far out you want that bottom to go, and just kind of equal lengths on either side. And then you can gradually get this to go and meet that corner. So if I start in through, let's say in through here, I can just kind of gradually widen my line until I get it to meet this bottom one in through here. So let me just kind of put a little bit more paint on my brush. I want it to go a little bit on the rounder side too, so just kind of rounding that out just a little bit more, and then you can finesse those edges. And again, I'm using this as like a wood oar too, so when it's wooden and it's been used in the water, it's definitely going to have a lot of bumpiness to it and non-perfect edges and stuff like that. So again, no need to be perfect. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, just kind of watching how far out I want that to go, and then just kind of gradually pulling it out and making it kind of go into that bottom marker that I've already made. So that way one side is not too much bigger than the other. And of course you can do any little fiddling and adjusting that you want once you have it on there. So now that I've got that on there, I'm going to let that settle for just a second. I'm going to put a a little bit of water on my brush. So my brush has black, brown, and a little bit of water on it. I'm going to give myself a little shadow of the oar on the boat itself. So I want this to just kind of take on the curve of the boat itself. So I'm going to bring my shadow is going to be right underneath my oar like this. And then what I can do is I will disconnect it from my oar and just give myself a kind of a curved line going down my boat. So that's going to give the illusion that the oar is casting a shadow on that boat. I'm also going to put a shadow underneath the tip of my oar. So a little bit of black and brown. I'm going to put it in the sand in through here, and then maybe kind of come up a little bit over here. But again, I want to disconnect it a little bit from the shadow like we did on the boat. So it looks like it is, disconnect the oar from the shadow. So it looks like it is three-dimensional. And then I'm just going to kind of rub this down into the sand, something like this down in the corner or down at the bottom of my canvas, something like that. So now I'm going to put a little highlight on my oar. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to put brown and white on my brush. So brown and white. I'm going to give this little handle part a nice bright highlight. So just kind of swipe it in a curved manner like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing down the edge of my oar. So brown and white is on my brush. And I'm just kind of giving myself this highlight down the right hand side. So if your paint underneath is still wet, that's fabulous, because that's going to give you a nice kind of on the fly blend to it. But I'm just going down this right hand side as I'm coming around the edge of my oar like this. Just going to give it maybe a little bit more in through there, and then I just kind of let this paint blend in with some of that wood texture. I'm picking up a little bit more black and brown just to make sure I have this left side fully covered in through here. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our birds. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my sand tan, and black. So I'm going to, you can certainly draw these out, but I'm going to just use my paint to kind of draw some basic shapes because they're not too difficult in size or in detail. So I'm going to find myself the back end of my boat, and I'm going to come up maybe about 1/4 of an inch, make myself just a little tiny bit of a marker. Then I'm going to go straight up from that, about halfway between that marker and the top of my canvas, so somewhere in through here, and then I'm going to go to the right about 1 inch, something like this. I'm going to connect these two dots with a really long type of oval, teardrop egg type of shape. So I'm going to take this, and over here I'm going to bring this out to the left, and then just kind of bring this down towards my mark that I just made in through here. And then on the right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring this out in through here, and then right a little bit before I get to this mark, I'm going to pull it in just a bit, something like this, and then bring it down. So this will kind of give us a visual separation between the wing and the tail. And then I'm just going to color this whole part in with my sand tan color. These are, I'm emulating generically a beach bird that's called, I think, an egret, and they are typically white birds, but I want to get a little bit of dimension in the bird itself, in the feathers, so that's why I'm starting with a little bit darker version of white. So we're using this tan. Then I'm going to go directly up kind of from the center of this part in through here, about almost 1 inch, and a little bit to the right, and I'm going to give myself a small circular type of shape. This is going to represent the head of the bird, like this. Then I'm going to connect that to the front of, we'll call it the wing area in through here. It's going to be kind of like a snake type of a shape for its neck. So I'm going to take it from right about in through here, and I'm going to pull it over to the right. I'm only going maybe about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch thick for this, and then just going to kind of bring it back in this direction like this. And then I need to give it a little bit of a beak, so I'm going to go right about mid-head and pull this out in a real pointy manner. Kind of, they've got these really pretty long beaks, so I'm going to go maybe a little bit past my the edge of my neck and just bring it out into a little bit of a point. Then I'm going to go ahead, that's all I'm going to do for, oh actually I need the legs. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to do some black legs. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black, and I'm going to have 2 legs coming down here. They're going to have little knees or bends in the legs. So I'm going to start right about here. Give myself a little bit of a diagonal line. You can put a little bit of water or liquid medium on your brush as well to give you a little bit more slender of a line. And then I just pull it down in this direction. I'm going to do another one right next to it, something like this, and then just pull it down in this direction. And then I'm going to give myself a little curve on the back side for one of the toes, and over the front for another one of the toes. So something on the back like this. Oh, that was a little aggressive. And then over on the other side like that. Now I'm going to go wash my brush, and I'm going to go do my base coat for my other birds. So again, just that tan color is where I'm headed for my base coat. And these, I want them to look like they're progressively getting smaller and smaller because they're going farther away. So I'm going to have 3, and they'll get smaller in size. I'm going to do my first one in through here. These are going to be really just generic representations of this big bird just flying off. So they have huge wings. So I'm just going to kind of pull this up diagonally and then pull it out in a little bit of an arcing way. Same thing with over here, kind of pushing my brush a little harder and then just giving myself a little diagonal. I'm going to do, this is going to represent, oops, that's a little bit too much paint on my brush. This is going to represent the little tail. And then if you want to represent that long neck, you can just kind of pull out a little kind of neck up in through there. That'll represent the neck. I'm going to do another one at a different angle up in this top right hand corner. So this body is going to go in this direction, and then I'm going to have these long, I'm going to make the wings get a little bit more slender and shorter as I'm going farther and farther away. So these ones are going to be a little bit more slender than these ones, and maybe a touch shorter, and there's that little tail. And then I'll do one more. This one's going to be kind of flying in the other direction, maybe that way over there. So and it's going to be a little bit smaller, so we'll just put the body like that, and then maybe a little kind of wing coming off this way, and then maybe a little wing coming off that way. And that's all I'm going to be doing for that. I'm going to be using my large and my medium brush for the next step. So you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush to start, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint some wild beach grass. I'm going to be using my large and my medium brush to do this. The colors that I'm going to use are black, brown, green, yellow, and white, and any combination thereof. But what I really want to do is just kind of frame the bottom of the canvas, make it look like we're just, you know, exploring Mother Nature's beauty, and maybe we've walked upon this little secluded beach somewhere that is not maintained by anybody. So we're gonna just make some wild grass. So I want it to be really kind of dark around the bottom left and right, and have this grass kind of just growing up these sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with black, green, and brown, and I'm going to be doing almost like a dry brush type of technique to just give myself the essence of these soft pieces of grass down at the bottom that are just kind of creeping up. And then I will use maybe a little bit more green and maybe yellow up at the top, and then we'll bring out the medium brush just to do a couple of more detailed pieces of grass. So I'm going to start with a tiny bit of black, brown, and green on my brush at the same time. So very little bit of each, and you can even just kind of tap it off on your paper towel. You can always add more, but to start, I recommend just starting with a little bit. And I'm going to be using, this is a flat brush this way. I'm going to be using it most of the time on the narrow side. So when I pull it up, I will get more narrow type of brush marks. If I was to do it flat, I'd get these really flat, wide marks. So if I use it on the narrow side, I'll get these skinnier marks. So that's where I'm headed. I'm headed for some skinnier type of just soft little pieces of grass. I'm going to just bring up a couple of these dark pieces in through here. And now once I've got that darkness in, I'm not going to pick up black again. I'm going to pick up green plus a little bit of brown. So I might still have a little bit of black left on my brush, but the dominant colors are green and brown right now. And you can even overlap some of those darker areas. This is where I'm going to just kind of softly pull it out along the edges, giving some curves so it looks like the beach grass is kind of just, you know, maybe blowing in the wind, maybe just these little tiny pops down in this bottom edge in through here. You can even get it to go over your oar, because the oar is sitting in front of this wild grass that I'm doing. So if you do a couple of pieces in front of that, that's going to make it look even more natural. So again, just kind of pulling this up. I think I want this just a little bit higher on this side, and maybe pull out a couple of little additional pieces in through here. I'm going to now pick up a little bit of green and yellow on my dirty brush. So I have not washed it. I just picked up a little bit of green and yellow. And again, just kind of using the tip of my brush or that pointier side of this brush to give myself just these little bits of the edges in through here. A little bit of the yellow is going to show a bit of sunshine popping through on these pieces of grass. And again, I'm just kind of progressively making my way towards that lightness that I'm going to be searching for in a minute on the edges of it. But this just really helps to start it with this fluffier, kind of wider type of a brush. So now that I've got that, I'm going to put my big brush away, and I'm going to start using my medium brush to just give myself some additional bits of information. So in where I live, beach grass a lot of times kind of looks a little brownish. So I just put some yellow and brown on my brush to start to give myself these more kind of identifiable individual pieces of grass. You could certainly use more green or whatever is speaking to you. I'm going to just kind of pull out a couple of little distinct pieces so we can see, you know, a little bit more detail on the edges of these grass. You could even put almost like a little bit of a wheatgrass type of look, where you would kind of dot the edges of some of these, and that'll give you a little bit more of a different kind of look to it. So you can certainly, if you want that textural element and you want to add a little bit more fun information, you can certainly put in a couple of those little bits of details. Now I'm going to just pick up with I have yellow, brown, and now I'm picking up a touch of white on my brush also. So yellow, brown, and white, just to give me just a couple of really bright pieces of sunshine grass right along these edges, like they're being illuminated by that light source over in through there. So maybe pop in a little bit in through here. And again, this is one of those steps where you might find you love the lightness, so add as much as you want. Or if you're feeling that you're digging the darker shades of it, make it a little bit darker, and like the light source has not hit these as of yet. So feel free to bring this into whatever, you know, brightness or darkness is pleasing to your eye. And then we're going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this, all your wild grass in here, and it's, you know, bringing happiness to your painterly eye, you can put this medium brush away. Take out your small brush. I like doing wild grass too. It's tough for me to stop the wild grass, but once you've got yours done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our birds. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are black, white, yellow, and maybe some of my sand tan. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm in essence going to be adding shadows to show the form of the body and the neck, and I'll be adding highlights to show the details in the feathers, highlights on the feet. We're going to put some highlight on the head. We do need to do a little dot for an eye and make that beak a yellow type of a color. So I'm going to start with my shadowy areas first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use black and white, and I'm going to make myself just kind of a grayish color. Not necessarily as dark as I had made for the boat. I definitely just want it a little bit different than that sand tan, so we add another color or dimensional element to the bird. So somewhere in through here is about where I'm headed with my gray, and I'm going to add little bits of this on the back side of the bird, especially in this tail region in through here. I think actually I want it a little bit darker than that, so I'm just making a tiny bit darker so I can add little bits. There we go, that works. I just added a teeny bit more to get that darkness going, and I'm just pulling it up a little bit on this back side and in towards the bottom of that side wing. I'm also going to put a tiny bit in this back area in through here, and I don't need much at all. This is really just going to help get the dimensional element into those wings. So now I'm going to use this gray also on the back of my bird's neck. So my light source is over to the right, so I'm going to put some of this gray on the back side of my bird's neck so we can get some shadow back in through there. Maybe a touch on the back side of the head as well. Now what I'm going to do, without washing my brush, I'm going to start picking up white paint. So because I didn't wash my brush, I still have some of that gray on there, so we're going to progressively get lighter and lighter as we move towards the bright side of the bird. So I'm going to start up in through here, and I'm going to give myself just the little essence of feather texture coming down this back side. I'm just giving these little kind of curved type of lines on top of everything I've done up to this point. So because I'm kind of progressively getting lighter and lighter, it's going to show some great dimension. I just picked up a little bit more white as I work my way towards this right hand side. I'm going to curve my brush a little bit differently around this shoulder and coming down these feathers in through this wing here. So this is probably the most confusing area because you have feathers going this way and this way. So you just kind of want to consider this to be like your wing area and this your shoulder area. I'm just kind of bringing them down in that kind of, like they're falling from that area of the bird. So you might have to turn, you know, the direction of your brush strokes a little bit to accomplish that. And then I just kind of keep picking up white to get these edges to be a little bit brighter and brighter, because the highlight to me is on that right hand side. So just a little bit more white as I'm moving and making my details over here on the right hand side and up on this shoulder in through here. So once I've got that done, I'm going to add a little bit more brightness on the head and the face and all that good stuff. But this is looking pretty good. I've got a good highlight over there on the right hand side and some good texture to those wings, so, or the wing and the back feathers. So I just picked up a little bit more white paint. There's a little bit of brown on my brush. Let me just wipe it off, pick up some more white. There we go. So I've got a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to paint the beak white to start because I want my yellow on my beak to be really yellow. So in order for that to be accomplished, I need to have a white base to it. And then I'm going to paint the head white, something like this, and just bring down a little bit on that back side. And then as I come down this front part, I just have white on my brush. I'll get it to fade into that shadow in a second. So I've got white on my brush down that front side. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that gray that we did a minute ago, just to, on my dirty brush, just to get it to blend a little bit on the dark side, on the back side of the bird's head. So that was started with white, and then I put a little bit of the white and the gray just so we can get that dimensional element in the head. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of black on my brush and give this bird a little itty bitty eye. So I'm just going to go somewhere directly back from that beak in through here. Give myself just an itty bitty bit of a circle eye. Nothing much in through there. Gonna wash and dry my brush. Gonna pick up some yellow and give the bird a big yellow beak. So big yellow beak like this. And then I will pick up a touch of white to just make sure that beak has a little bit of a highlight on the top. So I didn't wash my brush, but I picked up a little bit of white just to kind of accentuate a little bit of a highlight on the top of that beak. Now I'm going to go move on to my other birds. So I'm going to wash and dry. I'm going to move on to my other birds. I forgot the legs on the big bird first, so let's go back to the other bird. Let's finish up our legs before we get to the little bird. Sorry about that. So all I really need to do on these guys is give them a little bit of a highlight. So I put a touch of white paint on my brush, and I'm just going to go down the right side of these legs with a little tiny white line. So a little tiny white line on the right side of the leg, something like this. And again, if you needed either a smaller brush or it to be a little bit more pointy, you can certainly either use a smaller brush or a little bit of liquid medium on your brush. I'm going to pick up actually a touch of brown and yellow just to put a little bit of color into these feet, a little bit of brown and yellow. That will help do that. And a little shadow under them. So a touch of brown, just a little shadow on that boat edge, something like that. There we go. That makes me happy. Now we can go on to the other birds. So wash and dry my brush, and I'm just going to put some white paint on my brush and going to give these guys a little bit of highlight. So just a little bit of white paint. My light source is over there, so I'm just going to kind of tap in these little bits of bright white marks on the left side of these, because that's to me where my light source would be, somewhere over here. Maybe this one's got it coming from the back or the top. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to these little guys. And if you can't find or, easily execute the left side, just put little stripes of highlights on them, and that's going to make them visible on top of this background, and you'll be able to see a little bit of dimension to them. And that's all I'm going to do with them. I'm going to be using this tiny brush for the next step. So once you've got your birds done, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I'm going to go bottom left on this one, and I'm going to sign mine with black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you would like for your identifying mark to be, because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very lively beach summer image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.